Islam is no different than any other of these religions, sociologically speaking. People have a holy text, and now I'm just looking at Christianity and Islam, but because these are the two largest religions in the world. It's the same religion as far as Sam the sociologist is concerned. It's the same thing. You have a holy text, and you got to figure out what the hell it means and how you're going to decide and how you're going to act. So let me show you a couple things about men and women. So these are Amish women. These are all Christians, right? These are Amish women. There were some handing out some literature across from the hub, you little kids, which is kind of cool. Here's a Catholic priest, a nun. Here's a Mormon woman. You don't see their bum. You don't see the curves on their bodies because they've decided that they need to interpret this in a particular way. And there are many, many conservative Christians, not only today, but over the years, who have made that determination. So these are Hasidic Jewish women. You don't see their hair, and even if you saw their hair, they're very likely to be wearing a wig. And the idea is you don't show your hair to public. You don't show it to other people. These are Orthodox Jews. It's this thing. You don't do that. You show it to your husband. You show it to your partner, but you don't show it to the world. It's it's a sensuous thing, which is actually kind of cool. I had a Muslim friend who had a friend who was Orthodox Jewish, an Orthodox Jew. And there was nothing sensual about this person. Sensual in the way that you would think about sensuality. But the Jewish woman invited the Muslim woman up to her bedroom, where only the Jewish woman and the Jewish husband ever goes. And she said it was like a room of total sensuality. So here's this Jewish woman who looks like this, and you think oh my God, she's completely asexual. It's no, man. She reserves that for one room in the house for one person. It's oh. And so this Muslim woman said, that was really cool. That was really cool, right? So she's Muslim. She's Jewish. She's Haredi Jew. There are about 2 million Haredi Jews in the world. What she's wearing here is called a frumka. So this woman's Jewish, right? It looks like a burqa, but it's called a frumka. And frum means very devout in Yiddish. And the ka comes from burqa. So it's like a total covering. So she looks like a Muslim woman in a total burqa. And then these are Hindu women from Rajasthan. So wearing the veil and this kind of thing and being very conservative in the way one's dresses is also, we see this in Buddhist religions and Hindu religions. We're going to talk a little about covering today. We're going to talk about women's rights. And now I want to go back to this idea of playing favorites. It seems like somebody, whoever's either writing this stuff or whoever's interpreting this stuff is men. Because there's no religion anywhere where men are covered from top to bottom, man. I don't see that anywhere. Playing favorites. So somehow God's playing, I don't know, or men have just decided that they know what God's saying. And I think women also decide, and we see in these societies where women have been in control. And throughout history, there are many, many epochs in which women are in control, man. It's more of a recent thing where we see men really kind of grabbing the reins of power. But it's just kind of fascinating to me. And so if you want to think about, by the way, as feminists, and if you're in this classroom, you are a feminist. And basic conditions of feminism, if you want to if you could think about it in the following way, feminism is just fundamentally this essential belief that men and women are essentially equal. Maybe not in the way that the amount of strength that people have on average, but men and women are essentially equal and should be given essentially the same rights as one another. That's feminism. So women can drive, women can wear shorts, women can wear watches, women can work outside the home, women can study engineering or science or sociology, or women can stay home and take care of kids if they want. They can have kids, not have kids, just like men, doesn't matter. That's feminism. That's foundational. And if you believe those things, then you're a feminist. And so maybe you've created some argumentation in your mind, but that's not what people mean by feminism. Well, that's just a bunch of bullshit that people came up with. That's feminism. So you can call yourself a feminist. And so it makes me wonder then about God. Clearly, the men who are writing this stuff are deciding that maybe God isn't a feminist or something. I don't know, man. I just put this up because I want to show you a couple of things. We live in a time when the politics of the body have shifted a great deal. But traditional peoples, traditional ways, traditional cultures across the board have not shown a lot of skin except in warm climates. And so so if you look at this Japanese woman wearing this traditional kimono, it's a similar kind of thing, right? You notice how you don't see the curve of her body. You don't see, there's no curves whatsoever. And it's really just this cloak just hangs over her. And this is really one of the most traditional dresses. This is in the Joseon period in Korea. This is what a Korean woman would wear. And then I want to show you the hair thing, which is very cool. So Confucius had the idea that, and many cultures have the idea, that you shouldn't adulterate or you shouldn't just harm the body in any way. You shouldn't do anything to the body. So there are no cuts, there are no tattoos. There's no tattoos of any sorts. I don't mean modern day. I mean historically tattoos, right? You don't reshape the body. You don't cut the hair. You don't do anything. You just leave the body. This is God's gift. You do nothing with the body. And so in traditional Korean culture, we see a very similar thing, like people growing their hair really long. Of course, it's really hard to grow hair really long because that gets really heavy. And so, of course, people cheat and they find ways to do it. And so they cut the hair off and then they wear these wigs that they're made out of human hair and out of horse hair and out of different hairs. And so you find different ways to do it. And all these styles of hair. So in like traditional Korean culture, you just see these really beautiful hairstyles that come from growing hair long. The men, same thing. And men would wear their hair up on the top of their head. And hence, this traditional Korean hat that people wore for many centuries, which is pretty wild. And notice the little hair under there. It's kind of cool, right? Because you're trying to decide according to your religious scriptures, whether it's Abraham or Jesus, or Muhammad, peace be upon him, or whoever, or Confucius, or the Buddha, or whoever it is. You're trying to figure out like how to do this. And we argue over it, and we fight over it. And this is a sick guy. Is someone in class sick? Is there someone in class who's sick? I thought there was. I thought I saw someone with a turban. He's sick, okay? And so it's a relatively small religion and in South Asia. And, at a certain point, you stop cutting your hair. And so when you see somebody wearing a turban in this way, his hair is all wrapped up inside of that. And it's pretty awesome. And so that's what's going on here. Like people are trying to figure out how to manage this. And so we're going to talk about that today, like how we manage it and how we should manage it and what makes sense.
Is there a religion that you know of that doesn't favor one gender over the other?
Not a major. Yeah, there are religions that in the text it doesn't. Like in Buddhism it doesn't. But in Taoism it doesn't, but it comes out that way. But in the practice of it, when men, whoever it is that gets in control of deciding how you're going to take this text and you're going to implement it in the world, how people are going to live with it, it somehow seems that it falls onto the people who are making those decisions have more power and more privileges. And it hasn't always been the case with men, but it certainly is mostly men, which is kind of bizarre to me.
So in the last examples you've shown, I've seen a general theme of people devoting themselves to the purity of something.
Yeah.
Either hiding themselves from the world and sharing it only with those specific people.
Yep.
Or in this, like, instead of hiding their form, they don't change it at all. Yeah. And it's all in these ancient, very old cultures that are all really separated and wouldn't really have a way of talking to each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where do you think this idea came from and where did it go? Because I feel like that's not as much prevalent.
This is such a good question. Yeah. It's not like, And so the idea is that you get two ways in which cultural practices will spread around the land. It either starts in one place and it just gets diffused out into the world, or it pops up in these different areas of the world, and it's very similar. And this is one of the things that we see popping up in different areas of the world. And I think it's because human beings, we don't know how to live with our bodies and how to live with our bodies in connection to the God. You know, the God is the God. You got to understand, like, you may not think about God very often, but when you're living right next to life and death, every day is like, am I going to live? Am I going to die? And you're watching death all around you day after day after day. God is daunting. And you don't know the science behind why some things happen. You can only imagine that it's like it comes from God, and it's a wrath. The current hurricane that just struck Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, man, you can only imagine that comes from God. It's like you got to keep your gods happy. You know, you got to like figure this out. And so human beings forever have been trying to figure that, like, how to do that. How do we keep our gods happy? How do we do it in a way that makes sense? In the U.S., in particular, we see it around the world. We see headscarves. But we also see this, especially in the U.S., especially in the South, especially in black communities in the South, that emerged out of slave communities. And this largely emerged what are called Tignon laws. And in 1786, the Louisiana governor had decided, hey, because slaves in Louisiana, in southern Louisiana, could buy their freedom. And so now you get these slaves, especially mulatto slaves, especially slaves that were half white, half black, or some percentage that weren't fully black, fully African. But somehow now going out into the world, it's like you got to find some way to control the black population. And so the governor passed these Tignon laws so that anybody with any black blood whatsoever, women, would have to wear these scarves. And so everyone would know who black people were. Even if you were 95% white, it didn't matter. You had to wear the scarf. And so these scarves then became really dominant and really popular, and I think continue to be really popular today. But in the United States, that's the origin of those, by the way. It had nothing to do with religion.